Hello everyone on YouTube, welcome to another world building workshop. We're going back to the basics. We're going from the ground up, how to build a campaign from scratch. And today, episode 5, we're discussing what exactly we need to do in order to help our players feel the impact of their actions and help the players feel the impact of the big bad evil guy's actions. So, let's go ahead and get started. As we're discussing the impact, for everyone on Instagram, if you want to see my notes, please come on over to YouTube. Go ahead and just follow my bio link. But as we're discussing the impact here, we can take a look at my notes from previous sessions. The whole point of feeling the impact is so that our players have kind of a consciousness about the world at large, right? Because if you have murder hobos, if you have players that are just going to murder hobo around, it's probably because we're not doing enough to help them feel the impact of their actions and feel the impact of the actions of the big bad evil guy or just the villains around them. And so a lot of today is less like quantifiable skill work, hey, you do these things, and more like loose principles that I use to help my players feel like what they're doing matters. And so I'll just share a couple of tips today. It'll be a shorter video, a shorter episode before we get into the finale and character development. But just a few tips on how I help my players feel the world around them. And what that does, I suppose we should talk about that, right? I could tell you the how all day long. This is how I do it, yes. But the why is really important here. The reason that we need to understand the why or the what is because that's the whole reason that we're doing it, the whole reason that we get anything out of it. And the reason that we're trying to show impact to our players and let them feel the weight of their actions is because that's what invests your players, right? If they don't feel like what they're doing matters, you'll find people phones out, right? Because, it doesn't matter what I do, right? If you are in a role-playing situation and half your table is not paying attention, it's because they don't feel like this role play, this moment is going to have an impact. And we've probably failed our players in some way, shape, or form in helping them realize, hey, there's more out there, and what this moment right here is going to matter. And that's what it's all about. It's all about helping our players realize that what they do matters. So, let's go ahead and take a look at that. Also, by the way, for everyone on YouTube, I am using a new stream platform. So if there's any of my settings that are like wonky or out of position or whatever, please just let me know. That way I can resolve that. You can drop it in the chat and everything, but I switched up my doodads so that I could try something different. But I need to know already my main microphone isn't working. So troubleshooting. We're troubleshooting as we go, trying to figure out what's going on. So what we're talking about impact. Let's write it down, otherwise I'll forget. Impact. The impact. So we've talked about the why. The why is because we're trying to show our players that what they do means something. That's great. That's good. Excellent, John. I'm glad to hear it. Instagram, come on over to YouTube. Join in the chat there, please. I'd love to have you. Like, follow, subscribe, all the things, right? Oh, here, I've got a page for that. Here, watch this. Ciao. Like and subscribe. All right. We're trying, folks. Every week a little bit better, right? That's all we can do. All right. So when we're talking about impact, let me paint a picture for us, right? Let's start by painting a picture that really shows the impact. Disney's Mulan, the animated one from like 2000 something, or maybe earlier now. Disney's Mulan, there's fun and singing and becoming who you are, all the way up until like minute 45. And in minute 45, I'll give you one guess as to what happens in the movie. They make it to the mountain town that has been burned down. And that is the moment that it got real. It got real for our protagonist, and they realized, oh, like this is not dancing, singing time. Like this is not about who's at home waiting for me, or be a man, swift as a coursing river, right? Didn't know you were getting a song and a show today, right? But the whole point is, building up to this point, every song in the movie is crammed into the first 45 minutes. Because from that moment forward, where Mulan like finds the doll in the snow, it's like, oh man, like this dude's like killing people, you know? It got real for our protagonist and our friends, and not once beyond that point is a song sung until you get to the dancing spirit family at the end. And that is a beautiful portrayal of the impact that the big bad evil guy has had on this world. Because up until this point, it was fun and frolicky and becoming more and doing less and overcoming who you are and gender inequality and becoming just as good as everybody else and better. And it was great until they felt the impact. And then things just got real really quick. And how do we help our players feel that, right? And there's really very little for me to write here and like, oh yes, this is what you must do. It's really more of, we need to create booleans. That's the plain and simple of it. For those that aren't familiar, we need to create an if-then statement in everything, okay? For every action, there is a reaction, right? We need to drop some physics on there, okay? This is representing if your players, or if the bad guy does X, then something Y needs to happen. So if X, then Y. And it's literally that simple. That's the formula. Hey, how's it going, heroes? It's good to have you. If you guys want to see my notes, everyone who's watching on Instagram, follow my bio link, come over to YouTube, hang out, follow, like, and subscribe, all the things. My mic is a bit loud. Okay. Oh, the background music. Okay. Let's oh, it is bumping. Thanks for telling me. Let's drop that down. There we go. Thank you for telling me, Steven. I appreciate that. That is why we are troubleshooting. So I guess just the first 10 minutes there is going to be bumping. Playlist is going to be bumping. Thank you for telling me, Steven. So if X, then Y. And what does that look like? Okay, so if your players murder hobo an NPC. Okay, so what needs to happen? Something has to happen, right? Oh, excellent. Thank you, Stephen. I really appreciate the feedback. I think I had it turned up for the wait page, and it turns it up over across all of my pages. So I'll need to make note of that in the future. So thank you. So yeah, if your players murk somebody in any situation or setting, we absolutely must create a reaction to that situation. And that's it, right? No deed, period, good or bad, will go unpunished. And that's not to say like, oh yeah, we gotta make them feel it, right? No. It means that you need to show them that there are things out there in the world that they are experiencing and that they are causing and creating. And so you'll get a player, let's say it's a barbarian or a rogue, right? One of those archetypes, someone who wants to stab it or wants to chop it or whatever, right? And they're not super into the role play, and they get bored, and they say, "This is boring. Off with his head," and they just chop the shopkeeper's head off. Well, the other customers in the shop should freak out, running into the streets, and then suddenly someone's been arrested. Like you have to show your players that there is a cause. There's a reaction to the things that they do. And so this could lead to an arrest and thusly maybe later a breakout, right? That could be interesting. It could lead to a duel in the street. It could lead to maybe a high level, that level 20 NPC sees you murk his buddy and just like nukes the group. All plausible and doable things. The point being, we have to show our players that no matter what they do and no matter what the big bad evil guy does, there is an effect in the world because of it. And so, for instance, the example of Mulan, the players, the protagonists, they roll into this destroyed city, this destroyed town, and they realize like men, women, and children have been killed. And suddenly the innocence of the campaign has been lost because your players roll into a new town and like, oh yeah, we're following whatever hook got us here, right? Because looking back at our old notes, whatever hook got us here, the adventure that hooked us in, the setback that hooked us into this situation, now it's time to see that impact, right? That's what comes next. This is a cycle. The ASI is a cycle. Adventure, setback, impact. And it will just go around and around and around as many times as we need it to accomplish character development. But we'll get into character development next week. So this adventure, the hook, leads into the setback, which I would say the adventure is the bait, right? And if we're going to bother using the fishing analogy, right? Our adventure is the bait. Ooh, that sounds fun, right? I've baited my players with the idea of, oh, let's play in this setting. I've got a new campaign setting made, the Great Green Sea. Oh, excellent. That sounds fun. What a great adventure that will make. Okay. The setback is the hook. This is the moment where you got them, right? Because you've pulled them in with a little adventure, and then the setback is the twist. And they realize, oh, not all is as it seems. And that's the juicy details that we love as humans. Okay? And that setback, that hook, will directly lead into the impact. And I think I saw a comment on Instagram. Unoriginal says, I've always used newspaper criers and other media or other random murder after random murders. Ooh, interesting. I like to make the immediate area well aware of the dangerous individuals around. It can make some interesting roleplay elements. That's a great idea. I think that a news system or town criers were a thing, right? There's heralds and town criers and people that would call out the news, and to, if your players just murked an entire family for their potion supply, that's probably going to make the news, especially in a small town. And so showing your players like, hey, people are aware of you. Whatever video game analogy you want to use, like the triangle's yellow, man. People are like, look on the lookout at this point. And it's this close to going red because of your actions. That's a great example, Unoriginal. I really like that. A great use of the local surroundings. but you have to have those local surroundings in order to use them. So maybe incorporate some sort of news system, or wanted posters is a great option. You know, someone witnessed the crime. That's awesome. That's great, and it creates a new kind of twist on what the players then have to deal with at that point. Where was I? Oh, the never-ending cycle. So your adventure is the bait, the setback is the hook, and this, the impact, is where we get to measure the fish. Okay? Where your players look at what has happened. Like, oh, okay, we did our adventuring, we encountered the setback, we responded to it. The moral dilemma that occurs right here, there has to be moral dilemma. Because moral dilemma creates the best impact. Right? This moral dilemma must happen. And you want to do it right here, in between your setback and your impact. Because that setback often is a moral dilemma. Ooh, do we side with the big bad evil guy? He's got some good points. I talked about this when we talked about baddies, episode 2, if you were interested in that. Baddies, you need to make them gray, the gray area. Studio Ghibli makes some great gray area villains. People that are just not necessarily evil, but they antagonize, they create problems. Elsa, she's not necessarily evil, but she is an antagonist. Everything that she does creates problems for the protagonist, Anna. If we're going to get into the Frozen, can you tell who's a father? And that is really important, because then we're facing moral dilemma for our protagonist. What's our moral dilemma? Well, Anna is a sibling. She has genuine love for her sister, wants to take care of her and be there for her sister, but her sister's doing some freaking garbage, man. Like, you've frozen everything. Like, this is not acceptable. Like, let me help you. And she's just like, no, let it go. I'm going to go cry on the mountaintop. Like, no, this is antagonizing. You are creating problems for everybody. Right? Like, that's Frozen, folks. The Ice Queen is the antagonist. Congratulations. But that moral dilemma, then we get into, okay, Anna, we're going to just roll with Frozen tonight, I guess. I guess it's better than Lord of the Rings like I usually do. But continuing on with Anna, for the moral dilemma, okay, she's newfound love, a sudden infatuation with another bad guy, right? Not necessarily the main antagonist, but an antagonist nonetheless, who is, we've kind of got a little problem triangle here with Hans, in the form of Hans. And so she has to pick, like, okay, like, do I, like, follow my love for Hans, or do I, side with my sister? And of course we see how that plays out, and finally, we get a little bit of a redemption, and Anna and Elsa, have their moment together, and it's great. It's a wonderful conclusion to the movie Frozen. Then they do it again in the second movie, and it's all more of the same stuff. But that moral dilemma has to happen so that your players can feel the weight of their choices. That's where the impact is. All right, you baited them, you hooked them, you reeled them in with your moral dilemma, and now time to look at what we made. Let's take a look at how big this fish is. And you find out with town criers, like, oh, that was a bad choice. We've just unlocked a really big fish. Like, this might be too big, and, snap the line sort of thing, and then you're on to a side quest. Man, we're just running with the fishing analogy tonight, right? Whatever. We'll work with it. Okay? But then, that impact, okay, we've unlocked a whole new can of worms, breaking into a different metaphor, a whole new can of worms. And then we're back onto a whole nother adventure. What? It's like the circle just keeps on going, or the wheel of time, or whatever other story you want to reference. Folks, the point here is, whatever our players do with this moral dilemma, right? It could be as simple as, ooh, will I kill the shopkeeper to take his potions, or will I not? Okay, moral dilemma. For some of us, yeah, Town Criers for the win, unoriginal. But some of us, that's like, oh, dude, like, what kind of a question is that? Like, really? That's your moral dilemma? Dude, if you looked at the two rogues, barbarian and a fighter that I had at my table, you would realize, like, okay, maybe that is like the extent of the moral dilemma that's available to this table. That's okay. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. That's totally acceptable. What's important is that we recognize, okay, here's our moral dilemma. What are we going to do with it? What is this going to do for us? Because, and this doesn't have to be bad, right? I just use murder hobo as an example because I think we can all relate to that. Somebody's been marked at some point. But what happens, say, if our players make a choice in the other direction? Say, well, looking around, you described the shop as a little run down, but, it's a small town and he's doing his best. Hey, because of, the deal that you've given us, here's a gold, on us. Thanks for the information, I appreciated the conversation, the flavor of potion, whatever, right? And your players, maybe give the shopkeeper a little boon. Awesome. That's awesome. If your players have given the shopkeeper a boon, maybe the shopkeeper in return will give us a sign of that impact. Hey, well, because you've given me this thing, the impact, here is a little bait if you want it. Because you've imbued me with this trust or given me this gift or whatever your thing is, well, it just so happens I've heard a little tidbit of extra information, and just sprinkle that on your players. Totally acceptable, because that is going to automatically cue them onto the next adventure. So whether they make good decisions or bad decisions, show them the impact. Don't just say, okay, thanks, and then they leave. That doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't do anything for your campaign, and it lowers the overall investment to the table, to the story that's happening, because there's no story. You didn't give them any story. You didn't give them a moral dilemma, and you didn't show them the impact of that moral dilemma. And so they just look at it and say, it doesn't matter what I do. Whether I give the shopkeeper a gold coin or a knife to the back, it doesn't matter, because the result's going to be the same. The result should never be the same, and even if it is the same, it should never feel like it's the same. All right, folks, I gotta start wrapping it up because I'm running low on time. This was supposed to be a quick episode, right? And then I just get talking. The impact, whether good or bad, right? Whether it's good or it's bad, doesn't matter. Whether the result is the same either way, whether they choose the right door or the left door, and you only prepared one room for the room beyond, doesn't matter. They need to feel like this decision between good or bad, this moral dilemma that you have created for them, has a purpose. Because that is the whole point that we play. The whole point, hey, front man, good to have you. The whole point that we play is so that we can feel like we're doing something. And if your players feel like, oh, it doesn't matter, they're going to do things that they think will matter. There's the tidbit, the golden nugget of truth. Okay? If you're not giving them, if you're not showing your players the reason that it matters, they're going to come up with their own stuff and make that matter. Whether that's marking the shopkeeper, okay? The reason they mark the shopkeeper isn't because there's some vindictive psychopath or some sociopath. No, they marked the shopkeeper because they were bored. You didn't give them any impact. You didn't make them feel invested in the world, and so they don't care. Who cares? What's going to happen? Right? We're the big fish in the little pond. Little do they know that the owner of the antique store next door is some polymorphed dragon who's just stashing his hoard in a pawn shop. Right? You have to make them feel it. And if they don't, good luck with your murder hobos, because they're going to do whatever they need to do to get some form of meaning from your table. Unoriginal. I've had my players accidentally kill a couple people before. They ended up burning the bodies. The ASMR had an interesting dream that night. Oh, I'm glad that you're here, Unoriginal. Thanks for joining in. Once again, everybody who's on Instagram, please, please, please come over to YouTube. Like, subscribe, all the things. Because it matters. It matters trying to get a channel up and off the ground. Trying to make things move, as we're all trying to do. But I think that this is just about it, really. There's really not much more for me to say about impact other than you need to help your players feel it. Because if they're not, good luck. Because they're going to do whatever they're going to do because that's what they want to do. And of course, our players, we're all generally good people. And so in these moral dilemmas, regardless of, if you're acting within the bounds of your character, that's great. Okay, cool. Excellent. Don't be a wang rod. I got you, Colville. But we're generally good people. And so we want to do good things. Provide them the opportunity to do good things. Because if you don't provide them the opportunity, I don't know, how many more arrows can I draw pointing at impact? If you don't provide them that opportunity, then there's really no point. They're going to do what they're going to do. And I've said that so many times now, and we're starting to beat that horse. 500 by Christmas. Let's go. Let's go. That would be awesome. Maybe you guys could help me. Go ahead and drop a comment. All the things. Go back, rewatch other videos, because this is a whole series. For everyone who's watching this for the first time, please go look at the rest of the series. You're getting literally episode 5 of 7 just like dropped on you here. So please go check out the rest of the series. For everyone who's on Instagram, thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate you. Thanks for joining in and being here with me. I think unless we have any questions or anything standing out, I think we're going to cut it there. And then we're just going to do all the closeout things. Yes. Instagram, have a great night. Thank you so much. Have fun. And as always, take care of your players. YouTube, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I appreciate the time that you spend hanging out with me. I hope that it's 30 minutes well spent and that something, even if I repeat myself 4 or 5 times over, means something to you. And I hope that that's helpful. Carlos, excellent. Thank you so much. High School DM here. I'm running an adventure in my school club, and half of my table hasn't really realized that this is an open world game. Oh, yes, open world. Is there any way I could let them know or encourage that creativity? That's a really great question. Here's what I'm going to do, Carlos. I'm going to do the closeout. Please stick around. And then I'm going to come back after I go to black screen, just so that I can edit it later, okay? So give us 1 second. And... all right. So, hey, Steven, thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate it, man. So, Carlos, let's talk about this. When we're dealing with an open world, it's important to remember that your players are going to do impact. This was actually a really great episode for you to drop in on with this question, because your players are going to do whatever they're going to do. It doesn't matter how much we structure. Yeah, front man, hang out for the after party. It doesn't matter how much we structure our campaign. We could come up with the most intricate political plot and weave webs of magicalness. Doesn't matter. Your players are going to do what matters to them, right? Because of this impact, this moral dilemma. Because they could look at the problems that you give them and say, that's nice and all, that it's not what they're looking for. I have a great example of this. I had a party. I started them off in the campaign, hardcore hack and slash, like dropped them into this really cool combat, had a homebrew thing that did cool stuff the whole time. And then when we finished the combat, I could tell that my players weren't that into it. It just didn't strike home for them. It was a new campaign, everyone was excited to play, and something about that combat just didn't strike home. And then a couple sessions later, I dropped them into kind of a ballroom party setting, and they absolutely went wild. The political intrigue, the role play situations, the scenarios, discovering the secrets of the Baron von Strauss and his affair with the Lady Corvette, and all of the things, right? And they freaking gobbled it up, man. And so I would say look at your players and try to gauge what sort of campaign or what sort of people they are. If you've got a couple players at the table that like love the role play, make sure you're literally scheduling a role play moment into your sessions. And if you've got a couple players that are like, yeah, let's just roll dice and crush skulls and take the souls of our enemies, awesome. That's totally okay, totally cool. But you have to schedule that in there for them, because if you have a big old shopping session, boom, those guys are never coming back, right? Those players are just like, ugh, that was not fun. Like, we didn't even kill anything. Okay. Like, everyone is different, and we're looking for different things. We're looking for that different moral dilemma. We're looking to create a different impact. Some people just want to hang and role play and go visit every person and like, ooh, what's that NPC's name? And what's that NPC's name? And they want to know everybody and discover the world. And other players, man, they just want to smash. They just want to go in and just roll some dice and freaking great axe somebody to the cranium, man. And so that is my recommendation to you, Carlos, is take a look at your players and just gauge, like, okay, who are my hack and slashers? Who are my role players? Who are kind of a fancy flex of both? And then you'll have a better idea of how you can proceed from there. Because then you can cater your encounters to be engaging for them. And so, yeah, that's my recommendation. Another recommendation, which one is it? So if you go to my link tree, I'll drop a link in the doobly-doo. Man, can you tell who watches Colville? Into the comments description box. Go to my link tree, and there's if only I could remember. Don't just go there and like start fishing, because there's literally like 30 videos in there from old Instagram stuff. But I talk about kind of the open world. Actually, you know what? Go watch the hook, plotline, and sinker video. So go to the link tree. You can go to my Instagram and then go to my bio link and go to the link tree. But the hook, plotline, and sinker video probably be right up your alley on how to help measure what you're going to do with these players in the future. So I hope that helps, Carlos. Jeanette, thank you. Your videos have helped me. Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, please don't forget to have fun. That's literally the whole point. This should not be super stressful for you. Please relax, have fun, all the things. Steven, regarding open world, I think sometimes you have to show them that there are options out there, right? Let them see what's possible. This actually reminds me, I used to do something, so I don't know how you contact Carlos, how you contact your players or what messenger group you have or anything like that. But one easy thing that I used to do is when it's like a week out, leading up to, kind of give them the bulletin board in your chat, in your messenger chat or something like that, right? Give them a bulletin board. Hey, in the marshes to the south, you've heard of children disappearing. Okay, excellent. And to the mountains in the north, the dwarves have called for explorers and adventurers to aid them with an unseen foe. And you just give them 3 or 4 potential quests and have them vote on it. And then you know, okay, it sounds like everybody's interested in going to the east and having a discussion with the wizard in his tower about, the magical plague that has befallen, the local crops, that sort of thing. It just kind of create a messenger board. And that allows your players to realize, like, oh, okay, like, there's stuff going on, and we get to decide what we get to go do. And it gets better when the next week you give them one or two of the options, and then you give them a kind of the town crier sort of news bulletin, right? Give them sort of a, in the mountains to the north, the dwarven kingdom has fallen to an unseen foe. Refugees fleed the mountains. As you can describe whatever your villain is. And that helps your players realize, like, oh, like, we chose to go to the east, and it's not like a video game where that quest is just sitting there. Like, no, things change over time and change based on your decisions. Once again, impact. Things change based on your decisions. And because you went to the east, the dwarves in the north have fallen. Their kingdom has fallen because no one came to aid them. And that's a really fun way to show your players, like, hey, open world, man, and your decisions, they matter. So, look up the vid. I'll definitely stick around to try to keep you posted. Awesome, man. Appreciate it. School club hour, which is, it's tough. Short campaigns are tough. Those short, 1 hour sessions. A weekend where I do a meetup, that would be good. Yeah. I plan my campaigns in like 3 to 5 hour blocks. That's like one session. And so that can be really tough if you're doing it 1 hour at a time. It actually makes me think, maybe I'll do a video sometime on how to run like short lunchtime campaigns. So I'll write that down. And on that note, I think it's time to go. Hey, everybody, like and subscribe. Have fun, and as always, take care of your players. All right, anybody got any questions? No? Nothing? Nada? All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for watching.